Hello and welcome to my channel, and welcome to this week's Thursday Thoughts, in which I discuss my June wrap-up and my rolling TBR for July. In June I finished The Five by Halle Rubenhold, The Red Rose of Anjou by Jean Plaidy, the 13th book in her Plantagenet series, and I read 13 short stories from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's collection called Tales of Terror and Tales of Mystery. I have reviewed all three of these in previous videos. I read books 1 and 2, totaling 300 pages, of The Prime Minister by Anthony Trollope. I want to read two letters written by two very different men to give you an idea of their characters. Trollope is brilliant at writing letters in his novels, and these two are no exception. The first is written by Arthur Fletcher, the one-time lover, in the Victorian sense, of Emily Wharton, now the wife of Ferdinand Lopez. Both men are now prospective candidates for the seat of Silverbridge in a by-election to become MP for that borough. He writes, "My dear Mrs. Lopez, I think it best to make an explanation to you as to a certain coincidence which might possibly be misunderstood unless explained. I find that your husband and I are to be opponents at Silverbridge. I wish to say that I had pledged myself to the borough before I'd heard his name as connected with it. I have very old associations with the neighbourhood, and was invited to stand by friends who had known me all my life as soon as it was understood that there would be an open contest. I cannot retire now without breaking faith with my party, nor do I know that there is any reason why I should do so. I should not, however, have come forward had I known that Mr. Lopez was to stand. I think you had better tell him so, and tell him also, with my compliments, that I hope we may fight our political battle with mutual good fellowship and good feeling. Yours very sincerely, Arthur Fletcher." Emily was very much pleased with this letter, and yet she wept over it. She felt that she understood accurately all the motives that were at work within the man's breast when he was writing it. As to its truth, of course, the letter was gospel to her. Oh, if the man could become her husband's friend, how sweet it would be! Of course, she thoroughly wished that her husband should succeed at Silverbridge, but she could understand that such a contest as this might be carried on without personal animosity. The letter was so like Arthur Fletcher, so good, so noble, so generous, so true. The moment her husband came in, she showed it to with delight. "I was sure," she said, as he was reading the letter, "that he had not known that you were to stand." "He knew it as well as I did," he replied, and as he spoke there came a dark scowl across his brow. "His writing to you is a piece of infernal impudence." "Oh, Ferdinand!" "You don't understand, but I do. He deserves to be horsewhipped for daring to write to you. If I can come across him, he shall have it." "Oh, for heaven's sake!" "A man who was your rejected lover, who has been trying to marry you for the last 2 years, presuming to commence a correspondence with you without your husband's sanction." "He meant you to see it. He says I am to tell you." "That is simple cowardice. He meant you not to tell me, and then when you had answered him without telling me, he would have had the whip hand of you." "Oh, Ferdinand, what evil thoughts you have!" "You are a child, my dear, and must allow me to dictate to you what you ought to think in such a matter as this. I tell you he knew all about my candidature, and that what he has said here to the contrary is a mere lie. Yes, a lie." He repeated the word because he saw that she shrank at hearing it, but he did not understand why she shrank, that the idea of such an accusation against Arthur Fletcher was intolerable to her. "I have never heard of such a thing," he continued. "Do you suppose it is common for men who have been thrown over to write to the ladies who have rejected them, immediately after their marriage? Do the circumstances not justify it? No! They make it infinitely worse. He should have felt himself to be debarred from writing to you, both as being my wife and as being the wife of the man who intends to oppose him at Silverbridge. This he said with so much anger that he frightened her. It is not my fault, she said. No, it is not your fault, but you should regard it as a great fault committed by him. What am I to do? Give me the letter. You, of course, can do nothing. You will not quarrel with him? Certainly I will. I've quarrelled with him already. Do you think I will allow any man to insult my wife without quarrelling with him? Later, Lopez is required to retire from the contest, and he is so angry at the outcome of events that he writes to Fletcher the following letter. Sir, before this election began, you were guilty of gross impertinence in writing a letter to my wife, to her extreme annoyance and to my most justifiable anger. Any gentleman would think that the treatment that you have already received at her hands would have served to save her from such insult, but there are men who will never take a lesson without a beating. And now, since you have been here, you have presumed to offer to shake hands with me in the street, though you ought to have known that I should not choose to meet you on friendly terms after what has taken place. I now write to tell you that I shall carry a horsewhip while I am here, and that if I should meet you in the streets again before I leave the town, I shall use it. Ferdinand Lopez. To discover what happens next, you will have to read the book. I also read Book 1, totaling 150 pages, of The Black Moon by Winston Graham. And I read the first book, totaling 220 pages, of The Day of the Scorpion by Paul Scott. So my 3 unfinished books will roll over to July. One book from my June TBR, The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, I have decided to defer until VICTOBER. In July, I am adding 4 books to my rolling TBR. They are Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy for David Murphy's read-along, The Duke's Children, the 6th and final book in the Palliser series by Anthony Trollope for Steve's read-along, Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand, a book recommended by my dear booktube friend Meghan Hanet. If you haven't checked out her channel yet, then you can do so from the link below. Unbroken is a true story of survival. In 1943, a bomber crashes into the Pacific Ocean. Against all odds, one young lieutenant survives. Louis Zamperini had already transformed himself from child delinquent to prodigious athlete, running in the Berlin Olympics. Now he must embark on one of the Second World War's most extraordinary odysseys. Zamperini faces thousands of miles of open ocean on a failing raft. Beyond lies only greater trials in Japan's prisoner of war camps. Driven to the limits of endurance, Zamperini's destiny, whether triumph or tragedy, depends on the strength of his will. I've also begun Dune by Frank Herbert for the read-along, being hosted by Mark, Lukasz, Elena and Steve. I've read the first 20 pages or so of this book, and even though it is touted as the greatest work of science fiction ever written, I'm still not sure if it is my cup of tea. I have the horrible feeling that it is one of those overhyped books that only die-hard science fiction fans will think is amazing, but which the rest of us mere mortals find incredibly boring, pretentious and too clever by half. To follow the story, it is necessary to memorize scores of unusual names of people and places and things. Muad'Dib, Arrakis, Artides, Wisat's Haderach, Beni Gesserit, Gom Jabba, Thurfahawat, Harkonnens, Choam, Leto, Lansrad, Freeman, Dr. Yu, Imperial Regate, and those are just from the first 3 pages. This does not bode well for my enjoyment of this story. and the pace of introducing new and unusual names does not slacken as the story continues. At the back of the book, the author has the cheek to state, as an introduction to his 22 pages of terminology as used in the book, which I estimate at approximately 400 strange and unusual words. He states, in studying the Imperium, Arrakis, and the whole culture which produced Muad'Dib, many unfamiliar terms occur. You are not kidding. To increase understanding is a laudable goal, hence the definitions and explanations are given below. To increase understanding, why not write it in plain English? So that's all folks, but I'll be back soon with another Booktube video.